Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Well, we're going to be welcoming back a good friend, Michael Carter, and we're going to be speaking about his book, A New World, If You Can Take It. I can take it, I think. Maybe. I guess we're going to find out. Hush. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healings, and clairvoyant readings. So if there's stuff going on in your life, you need some direction, some help, some guidance, give me a call, send me an email. We can set up a time for a private consultation in person, by phone, or via Skype. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today and learn to become a certified medical intuitive. So I just wanted to make a comment today. This is a little out of character for my normal commentary on the show, but today is Wayne, but the co-author of E.T. Chronicles and Man-Made's birthday today. And as many of you know, he passed away a couple of years ago. And with the show being today, one, we had to do a show on extraterrestrials because that's like his total favorite. And I just want to say, hey, happy birthday, and encourage you all to buy his book in his name. And one of the things, we have just loaded all of my books and CDs and blah, 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 blah onto the Just Energy Radio website. So if you've been trying to figure out how to get a copy of E.T. Chronicles or how to get a copy of Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of Our Ancients, my new video, they are all now on the Just Energy Radio website. Well, you can click on them. They're not there physically. Anyway. Moving along. If you've missed an episode of the show, please do stop by the Just Energy Radio webpage. We have over 8 years of archives on the page, or you can stop by our channel on YouTube. That would be Just Energy Radio on YouTube. Sign up for our newsletter or subscribe to our channel. We love to keep in touch with you. Okay. Tonight, we're going to be having a great show. We're going to be speaking to Reverend Michael Carter again about his book, A New World, If You Can Take It. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about, and we will get Michael on the air. Drawing on the works of such giants as Erich von Däniken and Zecharia Sitchin, it is well established that many in the UFO community believe that our ancient ancestors mistook extraterrestrial visitors for all-powerful deities. Reverend Michael Carter will build on this outlook by reexamining some of the religious and spiritual philosophies and demonstrating how off-world intelligences shaped early religious teachings. His webpage is michaeljscarter.com. So please welcome to the show, Reverend Michael Carter. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hey, Happy New Year. How are you?
I am great. Just so nice hearing your voice and get to hang out.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Rita.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And I was working on my notes for, our conversation. And I'm like, I don't know. I maybe have like 20 little question note things. And I'm going, oh, like you're going to look at them while you talk to Michael. Because this is usually kind of tangent city. I ask one question and then it takes on a life of its own. I love these kinds of shows.
I do too. I really do. I mean, because we can cover so much ground and we can talk about whatever comes up.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be, spontaneous and a little creative and flexible.
Cool. The last time that you were on, we talked about ETs in the Bible.
Yes.
And so we're going to be kind of taking that concept, it seems to me, a step further.
Exactly.
And so I guess my first question to you, let's start here. As you read these biblical narratives about God in the Bible, do you think God is omnipotent and eternal? Or do you think he's something else?
That's a great question. I feel that God, if we want to use that word, is beyond human comprehension. The finite can never really comprehend the infinite. I do believe that the deity, if you will, in the Bible that we've been taught to worship, I believe that this individual is an astronaut. I don't look at God, again, and I put that in quotes, as a he, a she, a it, an anthropomorphic being. I personally look at it more as, an energy, an intelligence, if you will, that permeates everything and everyone. But, it's been said we make God in our image. And the God of the Bible is just a little too humanoid for my taste.
Well, we're going to come back to that whole, in our own image thing, because I think that's a very interesting point to cover.
Sure. Sure. I think if we say God is all-knowing, in some ways I know what that means, but in some ways I don't. I mean, are we thinking of knowing in the sense of a human being, that every little thing I do is scrutinized, or everything? I don't really know. I used to think I knew, but I think one of the things about God, or one's relationship with a God, is that one has to be willing to say, I don't know. And I think that because so many in our religious communities are so certain that they know what this being sees, thinks, feels, it's very difficult to be in dialogue, because if one person knows everything and the other one doesn't, you can see where the tension and the challenges occur. So I'm more comfortable with saying what I don't know, but also realizing that that what I think I know is just my own experience, and it will be different for everybody else. But it's definitely beyond my comprehension.
Well, and it seems like many religious traditions, all right, I'm going to say Christian tradition, I'm going to be a little more specific,
Sure.
actually try to put words in God's mouth and say, well, this is what God said. And it's
yes.
Well, wait a minute.
Yes.
Where'd you hear that?
Yeah. And a lot of it is interpretation, but I think if we were a little more humble, we probably go a little further, because I really do believe this certainty can be dangerous. Mm-hmm. Well, we see it now. I mean, we see it now. We're still fighting the Crusades. Between the Muslim world and Christianity, there are definitely parallels there, and also, just like in some ways, at least in my part of the country, we're still fighting the Civil War in a lot of ways. So who was it? William Faulkner said the past is never past. And I think he was on to something. The past is never gone. It's never really passed. And so until we can learn from our past, it's going to be hard to move on to a more sophisticated, dare I say, even a more mature cosmology or perspective on what spirituality means, what religion means. Because if you're so certain, you can't grow because you already know the answers. Once I'm sure about something, for the most part, not everything, but once I'm so sure, I'm not willing to grow or learn because I've already got my answer.
And in my experience, you can't connect with God on a soul level or a consciousness level or whatever level you want to call it when you're in ego, when you are in that certainty.
Exactly. That I couldn't have put it any better. And so this is where we are. And we can see the problems that it's causing on a micro level, but also on a macro level, on a global level.
But is it on... it always amazes me. Is it on a global level, or is it just in the Judeo-Christian world that is impacting everybody else?
Well, then, I mean, however we frame it, it's still affecting everybody else. So it is global. It's like throwing the stone in the pool. The ripples have the effect. And so since Christianity is, I don't know if it's number one, it may still be, but Islam was at one time the fastest growing religion on the planet. I mean, we see what's going on, and it is affecting everybody else. It could easily draw other nations into this quagmire, and it can very easily do that.
And I don't know enough about Islam. I know that I have met some Islamic individuals who were very wonderful, very spiritual, very wonderful people. I can't say anything bad about them. And our perception of someone that is Islamic is that there are terrorists, and that's really not even a true perception of that spiritual belief in the bigger picture.
No, it's not. And I will liken it to the UFO community, where we have individuals saying all grays are this, all reptilians are that. And so we paint that picture with each other. And we also take our biases and our prejudices and all our isms, and we project them onto anything or anyone that's different. So we do that in the UFO community, at least in my humble opinion, as well as with our global community here on Earth.
Them Judeo-Christians, they just created this whole big problem. But I think really that's really what we're going to be kind of talking about, because isn't it correct that once you leave that base belief system and start looking around the world at other cultures, they're very different?
Well, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I mean, there are different paths to the divine. I mean, you and I both know that. And so it's almost as if you and I are going to California and you hitchhike and I fly. Maybe Joe will drive. Maybe my wife will bicycle. We're still going to California. It's just that we're getting there in different ways. And it's the perspective that my way is the way that, or my perspective is the only perspective, is where we run into problems.
Okay, we can come back to this topic because it really needs to kind of add in another element, and maybe we can just go there now. Hang on a second.
Sure.
And it's the whole concept of, so there is this creator, omnipotent God that we were talking about, and then there's the God of the Bible. So would you say we're talking about one and the same character?
No. That's what got me to thinking about, and at least part of writing some of the book. And I use the Palladians as an example. They have an interesting concept. They say at least according to Meyer and the Talmud of Emmanuel, that there is a creator. Let's put it that way. They call it creation. But they also say that there is a God with a small g, who is a humanoid, who's in charge of the human races. Now, the point is that this creation that they talk about is an intelligence. It's an energy. It's not anthropomorphic. It's not jealous. It doesn't walk around with 2 legs and 2 arms and a head. It doesn't get angry. It doesn't do. And so the Yahweh, if you will, is this astronaut, at least where I end up on the spectrum, and who's jealous, who's overly concerned with circumcision, who doesn't want mixing with other tribes. I mean, he's almost like a human being with a lot of issues. He goes and he tells Joshua and the Israelites to go into the land of milk and honey, and they kill men, women, and children because the land is promised to them. This does not sound like a God that I would want to be in relationship with. But, you know, growing up in the culture, one doesn't know what questions to ask. You're given answers before you can even ask the questions. And if you start asking questions and they're too embarrassing, you're told not to worry about that, or you're told you don't have enough faith, or you're told something because it's either a nuisance answering those questions or you're making waves. So it's harder sometimes to unlearn what we've learned. I want to be clear. I'm just talking about Michael's journey. I'm not saying that this is the only way, or other people, if you believe in a God, should give that up or what have you. I'm just saying where my research and my experiences have brought me to this point. There are laws in the universe. I mean, you reap what you sow. What you put out comes back to you. What you focus on, you create. If you want to focus on peace, then be peace. If you want to focus on war, whatever you focus on, you create. Those are laws of the universe. Some people would say they're part of God. Well, call it what you will. But for me, I will agree with John, you know, when John says God is love. Love, and he's using the language of his day, love unites.
Who, John Lennon?
The Gospel of John. Maybe John.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, he did. All you need is love. Woo-hoo.
Yeah. So, you know, but everybody has to find their own way. But a lot of religions create this us and them dichotomy. I'm saved, you're not. And so it creates confusion, tension, wars, little things like that.
In your investigations, okay, so in the Judeo-Christian belief system, we have one God. We have Yahweh, Hashem, whatever, you know, Adonai, whatever word you want to give him. I'm going to say him because it seems pretty clearly a him that they're talking about. Yeah. In your investigations, have you found any other culture or belief system that follows that tradition? I mean, other than Akhenaten in Egypt?
No, well, basically, people of the book, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have one God, and it is a man. As a matter of fact, they're all related. You can't have Judaism without Christianity, and you can't have Islam without both of them. The same characters are in the Quran that are in the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Torah and the New Testament Gospels. So those stick out. You know, the Lakota Sioux talk about the great mystery, Wankatonkin. And I love that because they're saying, this is a mystery. I don't know. I just know there's something greater than me. And if I align myself with that, if I try to live a whole life, a holistic life, an integrated life, an authentic life, I and this energy are one. But they call it the great mystery. And I think there's something to be said for that, because it's not the certainty. And if you notice with First Nations people, they fought each other. I mean, it wasn't all dances with wolves and let's all sing Kumbaya. But one thing they never did, they never fought over God. They never fought over the great mystery. And there's something to be said for that.
There's a lot that was different in these other cultures as far as how they interacted. You know, they didn't go in and just try to annihilate each other.
No, because they knew on some level, whether I disliked you or whatever, we all come from the same source, that we are connected. That doesn't mean I have to like you, doesn't mean that we have to be best friends, but there was a line that we wouldn't cross, because what I do to you, I'm doing to myself. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't this whole notion of separation that we have now. Now, don't want to overly romanticize it. I mean, these cultures fought each other and killed each other wholesale, you know, depending on what the issue was. But I just find it very interesting that they were never arguing about who's right about God, who's right about the Great Spirit, who's right about the great mystery.
But it seemed like they all, you know, and I'm kind of shooting off the hip here. It seems like they all had a belief in, and I'm going to say, the same God.
That I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I don't know. It's just kind of the
same
feeling that I get.
I don't know if it was the same God, because I was just reading the other day. It's an old joke, but it was between a Native American and a white colonizer. And the Native American said, if I didn't know about God, would I be going to hell if I didn't believe in him? And the white guy says, yeah. And the Native brother says, then why did you tell me? In other words, I had no concept of this until you brought this here.
And now you're going to limbo.
You know, so it's an interesting dichotomy. But you know, for me writing the book, I'm doing Ancient Aliens and that kind of thing. You know, a lot of the ancient astronaut theorists, okay, we get it now, that probably off-world intelligences at least had a hand in, consciously or unconsciously, in our religions. At least, most definitely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But then for me, the next step was, okay, so what are we saying? Are we saying God is an astronaut? I mean, let's connect the dots here. And so that's what got me to thinking about what is God? What is, if you read the literature, whether it's from John Mack or whether it's from the old 1950s contactees, George Adamski or Myers or whoever, the through line through all of it is that, one of the through lines is that Earth people, our understanding of the cosmos and God is primitive. It is violent, and it's primitive. It's like God is Santa Claus. And if you're naughty, you're going to be barbecued, and if not, you'll be rewarded. And it just seems that it's got to be a little more to it than that. It's got to be a more mature way to be in relationship with myself, with my fellow human beings, with the cosmos, if you will, than if I'm naughty or nice.
Unless you're dealing with a quote-unquote small g God who is that way, who is in ego, who is a disciplinarian and is keeping control and order by threatening.
Yeah. If that's where you are, I mean, everybody's at a different stage of their evolution. And so, if what's the old saying? How's that working for you? If that is working for you, then one has to follow their their heart and their mind and say, this is it. Yahweh's the one for me. But that may not be the way for others. And I wanted people to know that there is another way. There's always another way.
Maybe the God of the Bible was just dysfunctional.
Well, yeah.
That was kind of a joke.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly seems that way. He certainly seems that way with the temper tantrums and what have you. But again, as kids, we weren't taught to question. And so, even if you thought something weird, you just kind of said, oh, okay, this is it. Because my parents told me, or because my priest told me, or because my minister told me. And, who was it? Paul, Paul says in Corinthians, when I was a child, I spoke like a child and I thought like a child. But when I became a man, I had to put away childish things.
I guess I wasn't one of those children. I always asked them the hard questions and they would look at me and I could always tell that they'd pull some answer out their butt and give me an answer because I asked the hard questions.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
But it almost seems, in reading your book, I never really thought about it in this way, that the gods of the Bible seem different from the other gods. I mean, they're all fighting each other and doing all kinds of things. And I'm pretty sure it was in my interview a couple of weeks ago, I had Steve and Evan Strong on from Australia, and they were making some comment, which kind of fit in with your book, was that they believed that the Pleiadians had come and were interacting with the indigenous population in Australia. And then they thought that perhaps another group like the Syrians had come in and moved into Africa and were the ones that were responsible for the enslavement of mankind and the mining and what has ferreted out in Judeo-Christianity. And I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it.
I mean, there's many ways to look at it, and because we don't really know. And
I hate that part.
But what I try to do in the book is to get people, and this is my bias, I'm not a scientific mind. I don't really care about propulsion systems and back engineering and all that kind of stuff. But what I am concerned about and what really gets me going is the spiritual transformation that can occur. It doesn't have to, that can occur. And so in some ways, I feel that we can lose sight of the message when we get so caught up into the other stuff. And I like it. I love that stuff. I mean, I don't, the Cherokee talk about, coming from the Pleiades and that kind of thing. And there were a lot of extraterrestrials divvying up the land, whether it was in the Middle East and parts of Africa or wherever. However, I look at what we're going through now as a spiritual malaise. And so sometimes I believe we can get so caught up in the forest that we don't see the trees, which is, whether it's from Adamski back in the 50s or now, we're being told that you are too violent, that you're playing with fire, with nuclear weapons, that you are killing this planet. And so I guess I feel that in some ways doesn't matter whether they were Pleiadians or Syrians or whatever. We're in dire straits here, and we need to get the act together.
Do you think
that's what I wanted people to get from the book?
Do you think it might be helpful if people, we start a movement where we let go of the word God, or give, that divine, all-knowing, omnipotent energy a different name?
Well, I talk about it. I mean, listen, and you and I talked about this before. I don't know if it's really doable to have 8 billion people, or how many Christians, to change the name. But what I do know is that instead of arguing about God, we can try to have an experience of God. And so the only people we can change are ourselves. And so rather than getting caught up in the noise outside, it's probably a good idea to start looking at ourselves on the inside. And again, that means me. I can't control what you do or what people do outside, but I can at least try to look at my own reactions and fears and peel the onion there. I think that's a good place to start with ourselves.
But I guess my question is do we need to let go of the Bible, let go of the God of the Bible so that we can make that transformation, so that we can seek something that is not in the book?
It's a good question. I don't think that we have to get rid of the Bible. I don't think we have to get rid of the God of the Bible, in the sense of, I think we may want to look at what really makes sense. And I don't mean that in a left brain fashion. I mean, when the book of Leviticus, when you read that book and Yahweh is talking about how many shekels to charge for male, female, and children, or child slave, we can read that and go, that's not what I'm about. I know for whatever reason this writer wrote that, and that was where they were coming from, but I have the good sense to know that that's just wrong. And any God that's going to condone slavery, I'm not going to. When we go to the other parts of Leviticus, because that's the book of the laws that Moses, and they talk about not touching a pigskin. Well, we know that there goes the NFL, there goes the NBA. I mean, there's certain things that we have to use our common sense with. We're not going to stone somebody to death for committing adultery. We're just not going to do that. It's barbaric. Even though it says so in the Bible, we're just not going to do that. And I think that that's okay to do. We don't have to swallow everything in their whole. Just because someone said something 5,000 years ago doesn't mean that it's true now.
All right, but wait, I'm going to be devil's advocate here. But do we understand why? Because it's not just in the Bible that we find these rules that we would see as being ridiculous, but why would they kind of universally enact these rules that we're supposed to live by that we just flagrantly ignore now?
Well, those things weren't. Well, let's be clear. The Ten Commandments weren't for everybody. The Ten Commandments were for the Jewish people. They weren't meant to be universal rules. They were meant to be the laws that Yahweh says you will be in covenant with me. You shall not murder. It's not in Hebrew. It's not you shall kill. You shouldn't kill. You shall not murder. You shall not covet your neighbor's. But remember, those were just for the Jews, because if it was for everybody else, they wouldn't have gone into the land of milk and honey and did what they did. They broke all 10 commandments. Those were just for the Jews. And people don't really, why do I know that? Because I studied in seminary. But those rules were just for the Jewish tribe. They weren't for everybody else. If thou shalt not murder, and then you go into a land of milk and honey and dash people's head up against the stone and kill them, well, there goes that first commandment. You didn't do that to other Jews.
Well, it wasn't considered murder, killing those people.
Well, that's where your common sense comes in, because just because it wasn't considered murder then doesn't mean it's not murder.
Right. And I understand your point. And I just, one of my new things has been looking at why we do the things we do from a moral perspective, from a legal and moral perspective, and taking it back. We have these rules that are very unique to being human. And it just makes me go, well, who came up with these rules in the first place? And why did they come up with the rules? And if we are breaking these rules, I mean, the murder one I kind of get, but let's say touching a pig, maybe there's some kind of cooties. I mean, then kind of just switching gears and bringing it more contemporary. It's like birth control pills and GMOs and stuff that they put in our food. It's like, well, it's all okay. And then you find out 50 years later that, you've given yourself cancer, or there's some horrible genetic repercussion that occurs because you did something because you didn't pay attention earlier. Mm-hmm. See where I'm going with that?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it just makes me wonder why they created these rules in the first place. And at this point, there are many of them that we just disregard. And what impact, what was society like? I mean, we don't even know that. What was society like? Were people more spiritual? Were people more tied to God because they were, they were in that place?
Well, you can tell what society was like by what rules they gave you not to do. If we tell you not to commit adultery, that means people were committing adultery. If we tell you not to have sex with animals, that means people were having sex with animals. You can tell what people are doing by what they're telling you not to do. So we do have an idea. People were barbaric then, just as they are now. But we can tell whatever the rules saying don't do, that's because people were doing it.
Well, then I guess we're really messed up. Because we have tons of rules.
Yeah, we do. And that's why you have, when Jesus comes along, he starts saying the spirit of the law is more important than the letter of the law. So there's some compassion, there's some mercy that goes along with those laws. And so that's one of the reasons he got in trouble. So he was redefining how the laws were. An unjust law is no law at all. And so he comes along with an interpretation of the Torah that says, why don't we have a little more love? Why don't we have a little more compassion? It says you shouldn't work on the Sabbath, but if your sheep falls into a ditch, you will go rescue that sheep, even though you're not supposed to on the Sabbath, but of course you would, because that's just common sense. That's just something you do. So he comes along and he says, some laws are made to be broken. Some laws are made to be flexible. And we still have that now. In 21st century, some of the laws we have to revisit. Some of the laws we may have to even get rid of. So, laws are ebbing and flowing all the time, whether they're relational, whether they're institutional. It's always the constant ebb and flow of what maybe worked 50 years ago may not work now. So maybe we need to revisit some of the laws, some of the things that work. Life changes. Jesus says you don't put old wine in new wineskins. So Einstein says you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it in the first place. And so laws, rules, there's an ebb and flow in a healthy society.
And if the society is unhealthy?
Pick up a newspaper. You'll see what it is. You'll see it. You'll see it there.
But, but that takes me back to my original comment. There were all of these laws, and I don't know if it was because of population density or because people didn't follow the law, that it seems like we're in much worse shape now than we were back then. Well, I mean, we have a lot of freedoms, but then we also have a lot of restrictions.
I think, yeah. I mean, you know what? That kind of it's the glass full or glass half empty. We can, look at life and say, at least here in the West, that it's getting worse. And I guess we could all point to that. Or you may look at it and say a new world is being born, and the old world is going to hold on, and it's going to hold on to its power as long as it can. But life always goes forward. We're not going to go backward. And we live in, as the Chinese proverb says, we live in interesting times.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go back to our conversation more in the book conversation, because I know it'll just go wherever it's going to go again.
Sure.
Let's see. In the Bible, we've been talking about God being an extraterrestrial. Are there other things other than this that provide some kind of proof or some kind of evidence that supports the notion that God was not omnipotent, but was some kind of being?
In the book of Zecharia, there's a story where God had sent, look at I can find it, some people to patrol the earth. Angels are patrolling the earth. So you have to ask, why, if you're omnipotent, all-knowing, omniscient, all-powerful, why would you have to patrol the earth? Because you could see everything.
Why were the angels patrolling the earth?
That's a good question. But when Zecharia asked, they showed him a scroll, but they showed him a vision. I'm trying to find it in here, in my other Bible. And he's saying...
Is it the alternative extraterrestrial Bible?
No, it's your regular Bible.
I think somebody should rewrite the Bible with an extraterrestrial twist on it. I think it would make for a much more interesting read.
Well, you can do that already. All you have to do is put everywhere you see angel, put ET, and you've rewritten the Bible. It's in Zecharia 2. Zecharia 1, verse 10. And the man stood among the myrtle trees, answered and said to me, these are whom the Lord has sent to patrol the earth. Now that's in the King James Version. In the Aramaic, it says, these are the people the Lord has sent to walk to and fro through the earth. And so why would you need people to go look around the earth and tell you what's going on if you're omniscient? If we look at Abraham and Sarah, the angels meet Abraham and Sarah, and they're talking about the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they're saying that the Lord has sent us here to find out if we can find any just people, or else we will destroy the city. Well, if you're all-knowing, you don't have to send anybody anywhere. You know this. So those are two examples.
From what you're saying, there are the people that make the commentary that say God or, the extraterrestrial of the Bible, including the angels, are non-corporeal. So I'm not talking about the big G God, but the little g God. But in these stories, it sounds more like they were, at least in those moments, corporeal beings that Abraham and Sarah and whoever else encountered them were able to interact with them, talk with them, see them,
well, not only
potentially
that,
touch them.
Not only that, but they fed them. They ate. Abraham and Sarah fed the angels.
They were hungry.
Apparently.
They went to a Jewish house. You have to have some nosh. Come on.
Well, that's true. No, that's very true. A lot of people don't realize about the hospitality laws of the Jewish faith. A lot of people don't realize that.
But it seems to me that those kind of stories, I mean, especially in the first 5 books of the Bible and the Torah, that God's all over the place. God is doing all kinds of miraculous things, interacting with the people quite regularly. And then once you leave that, once they enter the the land of milk and honey, he kind of backs off for a unknown reason.
Well, also, we don't really know if it's God, because sometimes God and the phrase the Lord are used interchangeably. The Lord could be the captain of a ship. They're both used interchangeably.
Rabbi Wayne Dosick, he has a book called The Real Name of God. Yeah. And that's one of his comments, is that Elohim and some of the other titles that are used they're not names, but they're actually titles, and are talking about different people. So I think that's kind of interesting. It makes me wish that I could read Hebrew or cuneiform or anything that was not English, and even my English isn't even that good. But
yeah,
to go back to some of the source material and actually read it in source.
Yeah. Well, you could always pick up, the Hebrew translation, English translation of the Hebrew, or you could always pick up, it's an American Bible. It's a Greek Hebrew Bible where they have the Hebrew words and the Greek words there, and they have the definition.
Too complicated.
Yeah.
Too complicated. Because it seems to me, people have commented that I talk about Moses too much, but I'm sorry. As far as, Old Testament characters go, he's totally my favorite because he got to hang out with God one-on-one.
Well, we don't know, because the Bible it doesn't tell us. I'm looking at chapter 33 of the Exodus, verse 11. And the Lord spoke to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. Okay, that's verse 11. Verse 20 says, you cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live. Which is it? When they wrote it, they didn't clear that up.
But I think Moses had kind of special dispensation versus anybody else.
I don't know. I wasn't there, but I'm just saying the Bible, the book of Exodus is unclear. Like I said, in verse 11, it says, Lord spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to a friend. And then you go down to verse 20. It's not a long ways down. And the Lord says to Moses, you cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live.
That's because he looked like an extraterrestrial, and he didn't want to scare him.
But how does that relate to the verse 11, where it says Moses saw him face to face?
I don't know. But it seems like, and this is kind of my interpretation, that they did interact. Maybe they didn't look at God because maybe God was in the Holy of Holies, but I've gotten the impression that God would come and hang out in the tabernacle, and Moses and Aaron and whoever was attending and was sanctified to go into the Holy of Holies got to interact with God on some level, even if there was some kind of a divider, but be in his presence.
Yeah.
Different question. Do you think that the people that wrote the Bible, whether it was Moses or somebody else, could have come up with these stories and these descriptions if they were not talking about actual events?
I have no idea. I think that they were, well, we know parts of Genesis or, parts of the Sumerian Gilgamesh tale, especially around talking about the flood. So we do know that they borrowed heavily from other creation myths. But I believe for the most part, they were trying to, the writers were trying to describe an experience in the vernacular of their day. And so they were using the words that they knew how to use, and words can sometimes get in the way, but words are all we have. And so I believe that they were trying to describe an experience, and they were doing that to the best of their ability. As far as what they could imagine, I don't know. I mean, anything is possible.
It's a pretty good imagination, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, personally, I wish that they would find something in Egypt somewhere that gave the Jewish people validity in Egypt so that they could date them and look at some of the other history that was going on to verify the Exodus, because there are people that make the claim that that didn't even happen and that was just a whole story.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can find, if you Google or do some research, you can find archaeologists who have come up with items or theories to back this up. But, religion is a tricky thing. Listen, for those who believe, no amount of evidence is necessary. And for those who don't believe, no amount of evidence will ever be enough. So it's almost like chasing your tail. If someone comes up with something and you believe it, then you go with that, because there's no total proof about any of this. Well, some of it, but there's you can go your whole life doing that, and people will say, I don't believe it, no matter what. We have people do that in the UFO community. People have camcorder evidence or phone evidence, and yes, some things are doctored, but a lot of these things are pretty real. And you still have people say, "Well, I still need a little more evidence." So that's a game without end.
Mm-hmm. But there are so many things in the world that are probable or they're theoretical that are put out as fact, and I appreciate that you're saying, well, we don't know, and so it's not a fact. It's not saying that it's not, that it's just a fairy tale, but we can't provide whether it's fact or not. There are those years ago, 500 years ago, that said the world was flat, and that is what they believed, period.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I guess it depends on the individual. So, I don't know, you can go around trying to prove and trying to prove and trying to prove. If that's one's calling, then one has to do that. I just have a different take on it, because I realize that, at least for me, information is not wisdom. Information is just information. And we can go our whole lives trying to get information. We live in the information age. I think as far as religion and spirituality goes, it's good to try to come up with some answers, but at least some wisdom to live by. So it depends, where your head is.
But you don't have to have the Bible in order to have the wisdom to live by.
I don't think, I'm not implying that.
Well, I'm just...
I don't believe that. You can have whatever you want.
But there are so many people that believe that if you don't have the book and you don't believe in the book, you can't be spiritual.
Right. And that's their opinion, but that doesn't mean it's true. And you're not going to change that. The only person you can change is yourself. Took me almost 60 years to figure that one out.
I'm not even touching that date. See, I don't make myself more than like 20 ever.
Yeah. Well, but you'll find it out when you're 25 then.
Oh, in like a million years.
Yeah. 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 So, it's all grist for the mill, I guess.
Do you think that the biblical narratives about ET will ever be reconciled within the Catholic? And I'm talking Catholic. Let's talk Catholic versus Christian. In the Catholic faith?
I think it already is being reconciled. You have the Pope. Well, this has been going on since about 2005, at least the Vatican, dropping heavy hints about life elsewhere, visiting us, talking about, these are our brothers and sisters and that kind of thing. So they're already ahead of the game in a lot of ways. And I think I make the point in the book, just like with Hinduism, Catholicism will do very well if there's ever a official disclosure, even though disclosure in my mind is happening already. But because they make room in their cosmology for angels and other beings and saints and what have you. So one could say, as the Pope has said, that there is God and extraterrestrial life is part of God's creation, and they could have God-like capabilities or what have you. They're not God itself, but God dwells in them, and they make room for that. They make room for other deities, if you will, as does Hinduism. Protestant Christianity will have a lot of explaining and catching up to do, because they don't make room for that. There's God, there's Jesus, there's angels, and that's it. And we don't.
And there's my Jesus. Well, no, but see, there's my Jesus, and there's your Jesus, and then there's somebody else's Jesus. So really, there's a lot of Jesuses, and so I'm shutting up anyway. But in the Catholic faith, I'm going to go back here for a second. How will they reconcile, or will they even try to reconcile, the character that is in the Bible versus God who created all of the creatures, whatever planet or universe you live on?
What character are you talking about?
Yahweh. We'll use Yahweh.
Well, they haven't even come out and said this is Yahweh. They're just saying God. And I'm not Catholic, so I don't really know. I'm just going by what I'm hearing the Pope saying and what he's been writing, that it's no problem. There's God and the rest of creation. And so we're all brothers and sisters. That's how they're reconciling it. And I won't even say reconcile, because it didn't seem like they had a problem, really. Mm-hmm. So that's all they're saying. But at least they're saying that there's a great possibility of extraterrestrial life. We need to get on board with this and, and be prepared. You don't hear Franklin Graham or any of these other Protestant ministers even entertaining it.
But we need to go to break, and let's come back on this topic, okay?
Okay.
We're here talking to Michael Carter. His new book is A New...
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN Chat Lounge, the Game Lounge, Video Lounge, or the Mood Lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all of the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergetics.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading their free 50-page guide. It's also brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic readings. We've been here talking to Michael Carter about his book, A New World If You Can Take It, God's Extraterrestrials and the Evolution of Human Consciousness. His webpage is michaeljscarter.com. Michael, before the break, we were talking about whether the church was going to be able to reconcile the concept of ETs, or, you know, a little bit about Christianity and how they wouldn't be able to, or not as easily be able to reconcile that concept. In your studies, what about other cultures, things that are not Judeo-Christian? Do they have a belief in sky people, or no? Or how do they fall into this whole thing?
Well, I found that most cultures have some type of cosmology where there are people who have come down from the sky. Just very interestingly, the Dalai Lama weighed in a couple of weeks ago. It was on Facebook, talking about extraterrestrial life, and again that they were, if it in fact was so, that they were part of creation, and that we would have to embrace them as such. Again, we have Native American cosmology. We have, I just mentioned Tibetan or the Buddhist cosmology. Most cultures have stories in their paradigm of beings who've come down from the sky, have given us technology or wisdom, taught us how to live, or gave us some guidelines about how to take care of ourselves, how to take care of one another. So it's pretty pervasive. If you Google flood stories, flood narratives, and there's a whole slew of religions that all talk about the earth having a flood, and it's just remarkable. So it makes one think, well, all these people can't be lying. There's something historical here. So it really is a tremendous amount of knowledge and a tremendous amount of information about the possibility of life on other worlds coming and intermingling with Earth people.
But then what happened to us? How come we have such a distance from that thought and from that belief?
The only answer I can come up with is that we were told that it wasn't true. And sometimes it's harder to unlearn things than it is to learn something new. I mean, if you're instilled, which many of us were, at an early age with whatever, that's what you're going to grow up believing. And especially if to question means you don't have faith. If to question means that you are a troublemaker, well, it's only very human to say, well, I'm just going to keep that to myself. Or I must be wrong. They must be right. So now there may be other reasons, but that reason stands out to me, especially around religion. Many people are just coming to this, but many people, this is why Ancient Aliens can be on for 7 seasons. This is why all these UFO shows and all these books are coming out, because a paradigm has shifted. This is why 48% of the American people believe that there's life on other planets. This is why 50% of the American people believe that the government is lying to us. This is why France and Brazil and Mexico and New Zealand and Great Britain, this is why, and Russia, this is why these nations have released at least some of their UFO data. We're coming into a new world. And the old world is passing away, but it's not going to go out without a fight. But the data is there to show us and to tell us that people aren't believing these old paradigms anymore.
But that's a good thing, I think.
I think so, too. This is how the world changes, one person at a time. It's evolution.
But it also...
Sometimes it goes at a glacial pace, as you and I know, but yeah.
But it also forces us to have to look at information that is coming out of cultures that in the Western world would be viewed as being primitive.
Right, that's right, Rita.
And take another look at it that maybe they have the answers, which that's a huge paradigm right there, that they can't know anything.
You are right. I mean, it's changing. I mean, listen, we remember the old days. I mean, women should be barefoot and pregnant. We may wind up having a woman president soon. We have women who, now, the good news is that, at least in our society, we have more female CEOs and presidents of corporations and stuff. The bad news is we still can't pay them enough. But I mean, look at the paradigm that has changed. Doesn't mean that racism is gone, but we have a president of color. I mean, look at the Berlin Wall comes. I mean, look at the paradigms. I went to see Annie with my daughter and wife a couple weeks ago, and there's a kiss between this British woman and Jamie Foxx right there on the screen. I was like, oh my God, they went there. I mean, there was a time where they would have been lynched. So
because it was interracial?
Yeah.
Do you know when they had the first televised interracial kiss?
It may have been on Star Trek.
It was. It was Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura.
Ooh. Well,
but still, it was in space.
Well, the big thing, though, is when you see the opposite. Because all through history, a white brother can be with anybody. And there wasn't the big threat of a white man kissing a black woman. But you still have some people who, the other way around, it really gets them going. But yet in the movie Annie, we saw that. So, I mean, my point is this. Paradigms change, sometimes at a glacial pace, but they do change. And it's always upheaval, and there's always fear, but they do change. And we're seeing a new paradigm now where people are saying, you know what, I don't think we're alone. Maybe I'm not too sure, but I kind of don't know, but I'm thinking we're not alone. That's a big shift from, we're all alone, and these are weather balloons. Yeah.
Well, on that note, how far back do you think an understanding or the concept of extraterrestrials go? Do you think it's a recent phenomena? And I don't mean a belief in a god per se, but the idea that there are people visiting us from another planet, kind of that mindset.
Yeah. Well, we know the Egyptians, knew about extraterrestrial life. So, I hear what you're saying. Not when Kenneth Clark in 1947 saw, that the squadron of ships. But, I mean, at least back to the beginning dynasties in Egypt. And that's a great question, because that's what got me going. If I saw this being in 1989, then these people have probably been around since 1989, before the Common Era and beyond. I don't know if there really was ever a time when these folks did not exist. Now, when did they start visiting Earth? We don't know. But if we look at these biblical texts, or we look in the Quran, they're there. If we look at some of the writings of ancient Egypt, they're talking about flying shields and what have you.
It makes you wonder what they thought. Did they think they were extraterrestrial? What was going through their mind?
Well, it seems they thought they were gods because of the technology and the things it probably looked like magic what these people were doing.
And now we just have a different name for them.
Well, they don't appear so godlike because we have the technology. But listen, I'm not one of these people, Rita, who says that all of them are here to sing Kumbaya and hold our hands. But I am saying that many of them, their spirituality is just so far ahead of ours, and that's the concern. We're like little kids playing with a gun. We split the atom, we use it for weapons, and they're trying to say, you got to chill out on the violence. You've got to chill out on what you're doing to the earth. You got to be kidding me.
That's the message. Wait, say that again.
The messages that have come, whether it's from the old contactees back in the 50s, the people that John Mack has talked about, myself, the big message that comes through is that you are too violent, that you are too fear-based, you are too primitive in your beliefs, you are destroying the planet. You've got to chill out on the violence. You've got to chill out on this belief in separatism. Look what you're doing to your planet. That has been the message 60 years ago to today.
So there aren't any messages about take me to your leader and we're going to take over, blah, 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 blah.
I have not gotten any of those messages. I have not really read. I mean, if they were going to take over, my God, don't you think they could have done it by now?
Well, that's kind of my thought.
Yeah. So it's not, and it's not about that. It's about the evolution of consciousness. It's about changing your paradigm from fear to love. It's about getting over it that if you're Tea Party and I'm not, or your hair is kinkier than mine, or you're gay and mine's straight. They don't have these kind of perspectives. This is like a child. And what they're trying to get us to see is that we are more powerful than we think we are, but we're going to destroy ourselves and this planet if we don't get it together. And even Ray Charles can see that. I mean, this is what's going on. But this has been the consistent message.
There are the people that are concerned that extraterrestrials would just come in and want to take over or be violent. But one, that's not the message that you're getting. Do you think that there are races, extraterrestrial races out there that are violent and could pose a threat to humanity?
I do think that just like human beings are more malevolent or benevolent, I think that there are other life forms that are the same way. So in that way, a lot of them are no different from us. But I do feel that with all the technology, if they wanted to take over, it seems like it had been done by now. I'm not worried about them taking over. I'm worried about these psychotic people in Congress and in my government. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about them. I can get along with them. I'm worrying about people who just want to send you over to fight these wars. And then when you come back, if you come back, you can't get health care. I'm worried about 80% of the people. I'm worried about 80 people owning half the world's wealth. That's my concern. I'm not worried about any extraterrestrials bothering me.
Well, I don't get the impression that they really want to interact with us anyway. Not on that kind of a level.
Well, it's interesting that they haven't gone to many world leaders. They go to individuals. You know, it's individuals that come back and say, I had this experience and this is what I was told, or I had this experience. They're not going to Obama, and they're not going to, Merkel over in Germany. They're not going there. Probably because, when people have power, it's hard to relinquish it. And what we're talking about is a new way to look at power, spiritual power.
But I think also, if you're talking about these different, going and talking to a world leader, why would you want to? They're the ones that are setting up all of the mayhem in the first place. So I could understand why they wouldn't want to go there. I've always wondered, if a UFO landed on the White House lawn and they wanted to send a delegation to go and meet with the extraterrestrial, who would they send? So of course, Obama, whoever was the president of the United States, would obviously have to be there, and probably the head of Russia. And they would have to send the military in to surround it and do this very aggressive, fear-based approach. And my thought is, well, if I had to pick somebody, I'd be like, send the Dalai Lama. Send somebody that has compassion.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's just like looking at the day the Earth stood still. We saw what happened. The guy gets shot after he comes off the ship. Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. But it's a new world coming. It really is. And I think we're going to go through some rough times, too. But, paradigms are shifting and changing, and so there is a change in consciousness. That's why you hear many people say, too, they say, I'm more spiritual than religious. It's a hackneyed phrase now, but people are shifting. They may not even know how to be eloquent enough, and I sure don't, to articulate it, but they're saying, religion, as I've been taught, it's too narrow for me. I need to open up the box a little more. I need to think outside the box. That's a paradigm shift. That's a paradigm shift. I don't need a priest telling me whether I can use birth control or whether I shouldn't. I don't need someone to tell me when I can make love or who I can date or I can only eat fish on Fridays. I don't need that anymore. There's more to it than that. And you have people who are making that shift. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. But they're saying, this is not the way I want to live my life anymore. Don't want to live my life that way. I want a richer, fuller, more authentic, more resplendent life. And this concept of God is too small for me. I've outgrown that God.
Well, and I feel like that's happening to more and more people where they find the edges of the box. They find the edges of the box and they realize that there is a box. And they start to wonder what's outside the box.
Yes.
And once they're outside the box, they're like, holy crap, there's a whole other world out here.
Yes. It's like you're being free. And being free scares people, And it scares other people when you get free because it makes them have to change. And we all know that the hardest thing for people to do is to change.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it makes you come out of the ego, like you said. You know, when you come out of that ego, you're free. You're free. Free at last, free at last.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like most people, when they find themselves in that situation, have just a huge growth period and they become an information magnet. And, you know, they just can't get enough. You know, they say, you know, when you're working, you could, have the same job for have the same job and learn the same thing for 16 years, or you can have 16 jobs and learn 16 different things. And I feel like it's the same kind of thing. You know, you can read the Bible 16 times, or you can read 16 different books and get 16 different perspectives.
Yeah, well, it's like being you're a therapist. It's like being a therapist. So, you know, you can the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more effective you're going to be, right? You got a little bit of Freud. You may have a little bit of Jung. You may have a Gestalt. I mean, you're prepared. You can pull out you can meet people at their map of the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to switch gears here a little bit, and kind of talk about some other texts, because we've been really focusing on, you know, what we know of as the Bible, but there are other texts. There's some the Apocrypha that comes to us. Do you find the same kind of stories and narratives that come out of those kinds of texts?
Yeah, looking at, I have here the Apocryphal Old Testament. It's edited by a guy named H as in Harry, F as in Frank, D as in David Sparks, and it talks about the Watchers, and there's a book called the Book of Jubilees. You probably know about this, Rita.
Yeah.
But it goes into great detail, not only about Adam and Eve, but these beings who have to be extraterrestrial, and they're called the Watchers. But it is an apocryphal book. You're not going to find it in the Old Testament. It didn't make it into the canon, as it were. There's a book called the Testament of Abraham. Of course, the first and second book of Enoch is in this apocryphal book. So yeah, there's some Dead Sea Scrolls that tell stories, and you can interpret some of these stories, these angels, as extraterrestrials.
Well, when people read them, I mean, what do they think? Do they think that, you know, coming from a more traditional background, or did they just not read them? Like the Book of Enoch, I'm very familiar with that text. You know, he goes with the angels and they teach him about the movement of the stars and all of this stuff. I mean, it's kind of hard to get around the point that there was something more going on than him just having a dream.
Yes, but he's wide awake in some of these stories. But you're right. But remember now, listen, you said it, and if you grew up in the United States of America, I don't care whether you were Jewish or Christian or didn't know and didn't care, you were given by well-meaning people a bill of goods. And if you couldn't question it, so you had two things to do. You can either accept it, or you can say, I really don't believe this, you know what, but I don't know who to talk to about it. So, and in some cases, some people just left religion altogether. And so as an adult, we start to revisit. I'll give you an example. I just read I told you about the Apocryphal Old Testament. The only reason I bought that is because I heard other people talking about, if you really want to extend your knowledge, here's some other books that talk about what could be extraterrestrial life. So that means there were people at the time who had the same mindset I did. But the other thing is this, though, Rita, apocryphal books, because it was not put in, in the canon, a lot of people didn't even know these books existed. If you go up to someone on the street, have you ever read are you religious? Yeah. Do you read your Bible? Yeah. Ever heard of the Book of Jubilees? What?
But at one point in time, they were extremely popular.
Yes. But the powers that be, said you don't need that book. You don't need, for political reasons, for religious reasons. You don't need that book. So it's the unlearning. Nothing is hidden that will be revealed eventually. And so you have people reading. I mean, come on. On the Ancient Alien show, they're talking about the Book of Enoch. They're talking about, and I'm not saying that everything on there is true, but it's getting people to think. It's getting people to think outside the box. And that's what's dangerous.
But what's dangerous about it?
Because a thinking society is a dangerous society. And I don't mean that, and I'm not saying that to say you don't want to be a thinker, but when Stalin and Mao Zedong and when political revolutions occur, there's a reason why they get rid of the intellectuals. Because a populace that is thinking and willing to ask questions is more difficult to govern. We want people to be like sheep. So we'll have them watch the Super Bowl. And I love the Super Bowl, but we'll entertain them to death. We'll have reality TV. We'll have all these distractions. And we'll dumb it down. We'll make it harder for them to be educated. They can't afford to get educated. But that all plays into the hand of leaders.
Well, and it does seem like the education system is getting worse and worse. The amount of distractions just becomes more and more. I mean, you look at kids these days and they constantly have their phone in their face, texting somebody or Facebooking somebody. And it's like, can't you just put that down?
Yeah. And so it's the parents' jobs, they have to put their phone down first to say, wait a minute now, come on. And this is the thing. We have to have the spirituality to deal with the technology, not just on a macro level. If you're part of the military-industrial prison entertainment complex, but even on a micro level, the way we interact with each other. You go to a restaurant and there's a couple, and rather than talk to each other, they're both on the phone.
Why would you want to do that? Yeah, see, I don't even understand that at all.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's changing so much since when you and I were kids. I remember growing up, and it makes me go, I wish every 20-something and younger were listening to the show. I remember growing up, we were allowed to watch, no lie, 1 hour of television a night. One. We had no computer games, no iPhones, no iPads, nothing like that. We got 1 hour.
Yeah.
And then we had to go out and play. We had to read a book. We had to do something not in front of the TV set.
Yeah. And it's not so much, I guess, that TV or technology is bad. I sure don't want to. Technology is helping you and I communicate tonight, but you don't want it to take over your life. And I remember when I had a pager, okay, when I was working at the hospital as a chaplain. And there were times I was so glad I didn't have that pager. There had to be some time when I had some time for me. There had to be some time where no one could get in touch with me. That was crucial for me. Hard to do that now.
People think I'm weird because, I have a cell phone, but the only time I have it on me is if I'm leaving the house, and that's if I remember to grab it. And
Yeah.
And they'll like send me a text, and it might be 2 or 3 days before I respond, or call me on my cell. And they're like, well, you didn't answer your phone. It's like, well, that's because you called my cell.
Yeah.
That's why I don't give out that number, because I don't answer it.
Yeah. No, I wrestle with, social media and that kind of thing. I used to be addicted to Facebook, and now I just kind of pulled off. I mean, when you put the show up and stuff like that, stuff that's going to promote me, in my book, of course, it's a great way to use it. But I just had to, it took up too much time. Half the stuff on there I didn't care about. I saw people arguing with people they didn't know. And I guess it's a way for people to reach out and try to have community. But I'm always of the mind that even if I have a friend on Facebook, you're not my friend. I don't know you. We just communicate. But a lot of people don't know the difference. So I just had to back off.
Yeah.
I could pick up a book during that time. Or I could talk to my wife. What a concept. Or my daughter.
Get out. You like talk to people?
It's hard to believe, isn't it? Sometimes you can't stop me.
Going back to what we were talking about before we got off on this tangent.
Yes, the evils of technology.
Yeah. That's because it's the evil God that's doing it.
It's the evil technology God. Watch out.
That's right. We were talking about the Apocrypha, but what about like Gnostic texts, bringing it into more contemporary time? And, we haven't really talked about like Jesus's whole thing. And, was Jesus an extraterrestrial? There are those that say that. Or do you think that he was in communication and maybe channeling extraterrestrial information?
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's start with Gnosticism. I love Gnosticism. There's a whole chapter in the book on it. But you can see what happened, like the Cathars in France and what have you. They were persecuted and almost wiped out because Gnosticism is about knowing yourself. You don't need an intermediary between you and God or non-God or whatever. It's all about you, not in a narcissistic sense, but the answers are within. You can see where that would be very threatening to church leaders because basically you're saying, well, you don't need me. So Gnosticism is just another fancy way of saying know yourself, which I love. And I think more of us need to be able to be supported in doing that. Because it's nothing new age. I mean, this is old wisdom that we're just rediscovering. So I'm a Gnostic, and I love that. Getting to Jesus, I feel from my studies that there's a possibility that Jesus was a hybrid. If he says, my kingdom is not of this world, and if your mother is human and your father isn't, that means you're not really human. It certainly would make a lot of sense. The miracles, walking on water, changing water into wine, the healings, it certainly would make more sense. Now, for those who say, nah, come on, what are you talking about? Then I would have to say that he had friends in high places. I'm sure he had interactions with off-world intelligences. And there are verses in the Bible. Now, if people buy the book, they will find them in both books, but there are verses there. I mean, the whole story.
And would that be a new world if you can take it?
I think the new world, if you can take it, is this, that it's almost like Arthur C. Clarke's book, Childhood's End, that we are not alone, that we are part of a universe that is teeming with life, that the possibilities are endless. And the only thing that keeps us from achieving it is because we don't believe it. That's the only thing. That the ego and our fears are keeping us from taking the next step in evolution. And we have the choice. Do we choose love or do we choose fear? We have that choice every day, collectively and individually. The choice is ours.
But we often don't we don't make a conscious choice. I think we make a choice, but I don't think we make a conscious choice. You know, we just kind of go with whatever.
Well, I think we make a choice from the limited information that we've had. But again, I see that changing. And I have the audacity to hope. I still believe love is the glue that holds this whole thing together. And I have faith in, I really do have faith. I get frustrated. I get scared. I get crazy. But I do have faith in my fellow human beings. Life is an adventure. I've been very blessed. I know everybody hasn't, which makes me feel even more blessed. Yeah, because I mean, I have if I lived in Haiti, I'd be Donald Trump. I have a family. We have a home. We have 2 pre-owned cars. We have running water. I'm a pretty healthy man. I have a membership to a health club. I mean, I have a good life. Am I Rockefeller? No, don't need to be. And so I count those blessings. But I also realize that it's not all about me, that there's a universe out there teeming with life. There are people out here who are trying to get by, who are trying to make ends meet. And I just want to serve. I just want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
But that's a good goal to have. And I think if more people looked at life that way and their interaction with each other that way, we would be in, if we lived by the 10 Commandments or this code of morality that we all understand that, do unto others as you want them to do unto you kind of thing, the world would be so different. But we are so reticent to do what we have been trained to know what's right, or we know from our heart is the right thing, but we don't. I don't understand that at times.
Yeah, it is. But it takes courage to live that way. And we're taught, consciously and unconsciously, that if I share, that's going to be less for me. If I share what I have with you, there's not enough to go around. There's not enough money to go around. There's not enough sex to go around. There's not enough dysfunction to go around. There's not enough food to go around. And so we come at life with a sense of scarcity. And it takes time. It takes evolution. It takes therapy. It takes a whole bunch of things to go back to unlearn that. Am I really safe in the world? Einstein said that the most important question is the universe a friendly place? And if you were growing up where you had to watch everybody and you couldn't trust people and what have you, it's hard to unlearn that. And I'm not trying to be apologetic, but if we're going to talk about a paradigm shift, and that's really what we're talking about. That's what consciousness is. It's transformation. It's change. Just a fancy word for change. And we know how difficult that can be. It takes courage to live from your heart chakra because everybody's not coming from that place. And it's easy to shut down. It's easy to be kind to someone and they turn on you and then you go, that's the last time I'm doing that again. But you can't. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep going. And it's hard. So I have empathy for that. But it can be done. And it's not going to happen all the time. What's the old Zen Buddhist saying? 8 times down, 9 times up. You dust yourself off and you get back up and you try it again.
And then again.
Yes.
And again.
Yes.
And again.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of good people out here too. I meet them every day. I'd like to think I'm one of them. And they're out here every day just, doing the best they can and living and serving and trying to love. And, it's wonderful. It's not going to make BBC World. It's not going to be on the News Hour because that doesn't sell. But it happens every day.
Shockingly as that may be.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the clock, and I definitely want to get to this topic to kind of package it up nicely.
Oh, let me tell people where to get the book. Amazon. Well, they can get both books on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Well, we still have more time than that, but that's fine.
Okay.
And that would be, here, wait. A New World, if you can take it.
Right.
Gods, extraterrestrials, and the evolution of human consciousness.
Yes, and they can get alien scriptures too.
That would be alien scriptures, extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible.
Yes.
Ooh. Both available on Amazon.com. Okay, so here's the wrap-up question, because we have about 10 minutes. I'll say 10 minutes.
Okay.
What does it all mean? What does it mean to us?
Great question. This is what I think it means, Rita, but this is only to me. I believe that Earth is a schoolhouse and that we come here and we learn to evolve. We learn to conquer our fears. We learn to serve and we learn to love. And I think that we can get so caught up into propulsion systems and is this the Nephilim or the Anunnaki or are these the Greys or the Watchers? And all that is good to know. But the messages that we get from Buddha, from Moses, from Jesus, is that we are here to evolve. We are here to have compassion and to learn to forgive. And for me, those are the crucial questions, especially if we're going to go to the next level. But if we get so caught up in the noise, in everything outside of ourselves, we miss the message, because it doesn't matter whether Jesus was part extraterrestrial or not, even though I think he was. What matters is his message. It doesn't matter if Buddha had contact with extraterrestrial beings. I think he did, but it doesn't matter. It's his message of non-attachment, of detachment, if you will, the message of cultivating your compassion. Those are the things that matter. And if we want to raise our vibration and evolve, we need to focus on these messages because they're old. There's nothing new here. This is the same message for thousands of years. You got to learn to love one another. You got to learn how to treat people with some dignity and respect. You've got to learn to feed the hungry. It's not sexy, but we still can't seem to get it. These are wonderful messages. And they come out of the Bible and the Quran, and they come out of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful therapeutic and philosophical modalities and techniques that really how to make us more human, more whole. And that's what it means to me. And that's what I want to get out. Because, whether it's a craft or a triangle craft or is it a beam ship that's nice to know, but that's information. I'm looking for a little wisdom.
And I think that they have been giving the same message for thousands of years. You look at Hindu texts, and there are multiple. I mean, those people write about how to interact with yourself, with your being, your consciousness.
Yes.
And that's in written form. And then you go anywhere in the world and there are spiritual practices, spiritual traditions. But when you really get down to the bottom line, if you start looking at it, and I'm going to say from a technique type perspective, you're all doing the same thing.
Exactly. But we're killing each other over it. We're killing each other. But it all goes to, and you and I started the show that way. You're going to California. You're riding a bike. I'm hitchhiking. We're still going to California. We're just going a different way. It's all good. But, and I love that. I'm glad you even brought up his Hindu cosmology, because they also make room for deities and gods and what have you. They would have no problem with extraterrestrial life being announced. And of course they wouldn't, because if you read the Mahabharata and the Upanishads, I mean, some of these beings act like they come from another planet with the flying vimanas and what have you.
Oh, I mean, some of their stories, you know, they're very interesting and very detailed in the stories that you hear, and it makes you go, how could somebody make this up?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe embellish. The fish maybe got a little bit bigger.
Sure, but the basic, and see, that's why you're absolutely right, Rita, and that's why, you know, I didn't put Adamski in, even though people didn't believe him, but they cannot refute his photographs to this day. Same thing with Billy Meyer, and they're human, and they may have embellished, but what you can tell is authentic is the same theme. It's like people who had near-death experiences, or even people who meet UFO people. Everybody can't be lying. They're parts of the story that no matter what culture you're in, they all have the same similarity.
But then again, and this is one of my little new lines, we can believe in God, even though we don't see God and have really never interacted with God in that way, but we still can't believe in ghosts. And they're just as much of a quote unquote figment of our imagination as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can believe in ghosts. The thing is that you can believe whatever you want to believe. You don't have to that's the new paradigm. You don't have to let someone tell you what you should believe. If you had an experience with a ghost or being not in a body, you can talk about that. Maybe not in all circles, but you can talk about that. Things have changed. There are people who talk about that. It's no more about, I mean, yes, you still have religion with a stranglehold on some people, but that's always going to be. You're not going to have 8 billion people on the planet all evolve at the same time in the same way. And I know that's not what you're implying, but it's really about what you have to do to grow. And if you've seen ghosts, who am I or anybody else to tell you no? So it's no longer what you can't believe in. It is about who you talk to about it. I mean, you don't go, I don't go out every day and tell people in my congregation about they know about it. They've seen Ancient Aliens. They bought my book. They know, they've heard the radio shows, but I don't choose to talk about it unless someone asks me. But it's not about whether I can or can't. Once you give up trying to prove stuff to people, you're free.
Mm-hmm.
You're free. And I'm free as a bird.
Well, and it's, in my opinion, it's not any of their business. What I believe is what I believe, and you can believe whatever you want to believe. Exactly. And, you know, as long as you pay your rent and your taxes and whatever, you know, and you don't like throw eggs at my house, we're all good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And, you know, I just, every day I'm just trying to say the message, I'm trying to give out a message of unity. And by that, I don't mean you give up your individuality, but that love unites. And you can tell what people believe. I can tell you I believe it. You can tell what people believe by how they treat you. You can go to church every Wednesday night for Bible study. You can be in the temple on Shabbat, on Friday, on Shabbos. You can be at the mosque. You can do all those things. But in the end, it's how you treat people and that tells them what you really believe.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what a wise rabbi said that 2,500 years ago. By their fruits, you shall know them. In other words, by the work they produce, you will know them. And that's what I believe.
Yeah, and I'm going, wow, we only got 5 minutes. So I'm like going, zip your lip. Don't even open up this other can of worms, because I'll be like, no, teaser. Do you have anything exciting coming up?
Well, I'm going to go see the SpongeBob movie with my daughter on Saturday. No, what I'm trying to do is, this has been pretty exciting for me, so this has been great. I got a couple radio shows that Mark booked for me next week. What I'm trying to do, if time allows, is to do more conferences. I love speaking in front of a live audience. I love hearing people and their stories. So that's been my goal. If I could get 2 or 3 conferences in this year, professionally, it will have been great. If I get 2 in, it would have been great. I was just at the Edgar Cayce Institute last October. It's the first time I did a conference in about 15, 20 years, and it was great. I was only there for an hour to speak, and Erich Van Däniken was there, and Giorgio from Ancient Aliens, and John Anthony West, and Colin Andrews. I mean, it was wonderful. I was thrilled. And I want to do more of that. For right now, I think I'm one of very few ordained clergy people who is an experiencer and talking about this. So I think people are hungry for this kind of material, and I think I can fill a void, because I always bring it back to the spiritual. And I think at this time, that's what people are hungry for. So hopefully next time we talk, I can tell you I just came back from speaking at wherever, but that's what I'd like to do.
You and me both. We need to work on that together. Then we can like hang out.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, because I have my congregation, you know, I am serving a church. And so I have to be able to tie it in, you know, get some days off, that kind of thing when I'm out in the pulpit. But that's what I want to do. I want to do some more. I mean, I love this. I want to keep doing radio and some more television stuff, but nothing like a live audience. They're right there. And they want you to, they're rooting for you and you're rooting for them. And so that's what I want to do more of.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, conferences are really cool and really fun and adrenaline producing, and the bonds and the relationships that you create and form when you're at them. There's not anything that you can beat that with.
Yeah, it's really great. And, you know, you get the word out. I mean, I can sell my books. And because right now, primarily, my books are selling from the radio shows and from Ancient Aliens. And I'm very happy about that. And no, it's not a Pulitzer Prize winner, but, you know, it keeps some food on the table. And I still get the message out of love. So very fortunate that way. I got 2 people who really helped me out a lot and believe in me, Mark, Eddie, and I have a publicist on the West Coast. Her name is Susan Larrance-Dans, and they've just been, outside of my family, of course, they've been the wind beneath my wings, and so I'm very, very grateful.
Well, Michael, we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
So thank you so much for coming on. It's always so much fun having you on.
I love it. I look forward to it, and we'll keep it up. We'll keep it up. I was going to ask to get a link from you, but you always send me one, so that'll be great.
Okay. Can do.
All right. My dear.
All right. I will talk to you later.
All right. Blessings to you and your family.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
That's Michael Carter. His book is A New World If You Can Take It. Next week, we have 2 guests. In the first hour, Scott Cretan talking about the lost knowledge of the pyramids. And in the second hour, Kathleen.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to www.justenergyradio.com for more show information and to contact Dr. Rita. Until next time, remember, it's all just energy.